Welcome to a new series on English Plus Podcast, The Lies We Still Believe, or if you'd like to call it, The Myths We Still Believe. Well, I'm happy and proud to start this new series, and for those who've been following the podcast for a while, you know that we just finished the series on the wrong side of history, 10 episodes with 50 stories from history we all need to know about. So if you haven't listened to those as well, you can go back and listen to them. They're really rich with stories that we all need to know about. But let's focus on this new series we're going to start today. Let me tell you first about the series in general, and then I will tell you about this very first episode and what we're going to discuss in this first episode. In this series, The Lies We Still Believe, we'll uncover some of the most persistent misconceptions that continue to shape our understanding of the world. From ancient beliefs about flat Earth to modern fears surrounding vaccines, we'll explore these myths to understand not only how they originated, but why they still persist today. But this series is more than just myth-busting. It's a journey into the power of critical thinking. We live in an era where misinformation spreads rapidly, and the ability to discern facts from fiction is more important than ever. In every episode, we'll challenge you to think beyond what you've been told and question the narratives that might seem true simply because they've been repeated for so long. Our goal is not just to entertain, well, this is the main goal of course, but also to empower you to become a more thoughtful and discerning thinker. Whether it's historical events, science, or cultural practices, we'll look deeper into these myths, discovering how they've shaped our beliefs and what we can learn by unlearning them. So join me in The Lies We Still Believe. Each episode is an opportunity to sharpen your critical thinking skills, explore fascinating stories, and most importantly, remind ourselves that not everything we hear, no matter how convincing, should be taken at face value. So now let me tell you, my friends, about this first episode. In this episode, we're kicking off with 5 wild myths you thought were settled. Is the Earth really flat? Did the Trojan Horse roll into Troy as a clever ruse, or was it just poetic propaganda? Was the Moon Landing an elaborate Hollywood hoax? What really happened with those weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? And did Marie Antoinette ever say, "Let them eat cake"? Or was that just fake news with powdered sugar on top? If these questions pique your curiosity, stick around. We'll dive into how myths survive and spread, fueled by fear, misinformation, and some good old-fashioned storytelling. And hey, if you want to unlock the full episode along with every single episode in the English Plus Podcast back catalog, you can do that by becoming a premium subscriber on Apple Podcasts or Patreon. You can find the links in the description of the episode. And also don't forget to check out our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. It's a treasure trove of knowledge with everything from articles to bonus content. Plus, we've just launched our audio series shop there, where you will find exciting new series available for purchase, like On the Wrong Side of History, The Story of Modern Business, among other series I bet you'll like. I'm Danny, your host for this curious journey through the strange stories that refuse to die, so buckle up. And we're going to start our episode with the very first lie we still believe: the Earth is flat. Why this conspiracy theory refuses to die. That's coming next. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Imagine standing on the deck of a ship, staring out at the endless horizon, wondering what lies beyond it. For the ancient Greeks, that horizon symbolized a great unknown. They debated whether Earth was a giant disk floating in the void or a sphere hanging in space. Eventually, thinkers like Pythagoras and Aristotle settled the matter. Earth was indeed round. That should have been the end of the story, right? Fast forward a couple of millennia, and somehow we're back to debating whether the planet is flat. Welcome to the bizarre world of flat Earth conspiracy theories, a world where facts go to die and logic gets stretched flatter than a pancake. Now, you'd think that once we launched people into space and saw photos of our big blue round planet, these ideas would have gone extinct. But conspiracy theories are like bad movie sequels. They just keep coming back. So why is it that even with centuries of science in our corner, the flat Earth idea has refused to fade into oblivion? Well, let's dive into the mix of distrust, internet echo chambers, and psychological quirks that keep these theories alive. Now, spoiler alert, it's got less to do with astronomy and more to do with the way humans think and behave. Now, here's the thing about conspiracies. They offer a sense of belonging. If you believe in the flat Earth theory, suddenly you're part of a special group that knows the real truth hidden from the masses. It's comforting to feel like you're in on a secret, especially in a world where things often seem beyond our control. The flat earth theory offers a simple solution to a complicated world. No need to trust science or math, just rely on your own senses. After all, the ground under your feet sure feels flat, right? Back in the day, strange ideas stayed local, spreading through word of mouth in town squares and coffee shops. Now, with a click, they can travel faster than light. Social media platforms are like digital megaphones for conspiracy theories, giving them visibility they never had before. Algorithms love controversial content. The more people click, the more it spreads. That's why flat earth theories pop up on YouTube recommendations or in random Twitter threads. This isn't just an internet glitch. It's a perfect storm of human curiosity, algorithmic reinforcement, and good old-fashioned misinformation. You might wonder why people cling to these ideas even when confronted with irrefutable evidence. It turns out, facts don't always change minds. There's something called the backfire effect, where people double down on their beliefs when presented with conflicting information. It's human nature to protect our worldview, even if that worldview involves rejecting photos from space or thousands of years of scientific discovery. When someone's identity gets tied up in their beliefs, changing their mind feels like losing a part of themselves. Now, okay, you might think, so what if some folks believe the Earth is flat? It's harmless. But here's where things get tricky. Flat Earth theories are part of a bigger problem: the rejection of science and critical thinking. Today, it's the shape of the Earth. Tomorrow, it's climate change, vaccines, or the existence of viruses. When we lose trust in experts and evidence, we risk making decisions based on emotion and misinformation. And let's be honest, navigating the modern world without a healthy dose of critical thinking is like sailing into a storm without a compass. If you ever find yourself face to face with a flat Earth believer, resist the urge to roll your eyes or dive into a rant about photos from space. Changing minds requires empathy. Instead of flooding them with facts, ask questions. Try to understand why they believe what they do. The goal isn't to win an argument, but to plant the seeds of doubt gently. It's about encouraging curiosity and critical thinking, not making people feel foolish. Sometimes the most powerful tool against conspiracy theories is a simple, thoughtful conversation. The flat Earth conspiracy may seem like a fringe belief, but it highlights a deeper issue: the importance of being a critical thinking in an age of information overload. It's not enough to have access to facts. We need to learn how to evaluate them. The next time you hear a wild claim, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, does this make sense? What evidence supports this? And what do the experts say? In a world overflowing with opinions and misinformation, choosing to think critically is the first step towards seeing the world as it truly is: round and complicated, just like life itself. Alright, my friends, now before we move on, I would like to share some words we talked about in this topic, and let's explore the meaning of these words because these are also good words we can add to our vocabulary arsenal. Let's start with oblivion. When something fades into oblivion, it's like it's wiped from existence. If you forget your anniversary, you may wish the memory of that mistake could vanish into oblivion. In our episode, we used this term to highlight how flat Earth ideas refuse to disappear even when they logically should. We also talked about echo chambers. An echo chamber refers to a space, usually online, where people only encounter opinions that reinforce their own beliefs. Imagine living in a bubble where everyone agrees with you all the time. The internet can create these echo chambers, making it hard to challenge conspiracy theories like the flat Earth one. Then we talked about algorithm. Algorithms are behind the scenes on platforms like YouTube or TikTok, deciding what content gets shown to you. They prioritize what's likely to grab attention, like controversial topics or bizarre theories. That's why once you click on one flat Earth video, your feed might be flooded with more. And we also talked about the backfire effect. Now, the backfire effect occurs when people dig deeper into their beliefs when presented with facts that challenge them. Imagine someone insisting pineapple belongs on pizza, and the more you argue, the more they cling to it. Now, this effect makes changing minds tricky, even with solid evidence. And finally, we talked about critical thinking. Now, critical thinking is about analyzing information objectively and making reasoned judgments. It's the opposite of just believing whatever you hear. If someone tells you the moon is made of cheese, critical thinking helps you pause, ask questions, and realize it's not true, no matter how delicious it sounds. So that was about our first story, my friends. Remember, we still have 4 more stories. Every single episode from The Lies We Still Believe, we will have 5 stories to talk about. And our next story is about the Trojan Horse. Was it really a wooden trick or just a tall tale? That's what we're going to talk about next, so don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Now picture this. It's the final stretch of the Trojan War. After 10 long years of fighting, the Greeks are fed up, frustrated, and eager to head back home. The Trojans, nestled behind their impenetrable city walls, think they've won. Then suddenly, the Greeks vanish. All they leave behind is a massive wooden horse, just chilling on the shore like an abandoned art installation. The Trojans, in what can only be described as an ancient what's the worst that could happen moment, wheel it right into their city. That night, Greek soldiers supposedly spill out from the horse's belly, open the gates for their comrades, and the rest is history. Or so we've been told. As entertaining as this story sounds, historians have been side-eyeing it for years. It's kind of like the ancient version of the too good to be true scam email. A massive wooden horse filled with soldiers unnoticed? Why not just send a snake oil salesman to seal the deal? There's no definitive archaeological evidence of the horse, which makes some scholars wonder if the entire tale was pure myth. Was it a poetic exaggeration, or maybe just a clever propaganda to paint the Greeks as cunning geniuses? Some say the horse could have been a metaphor, like a siege engine or a battering ram that breached the city walls. Others think it symbolizes an earthquake or a natural disaster that weakened Troy's defenses. Either way, the story of the wooden horse might be less about literal history and more about the art of storytelling itself. And here's where things get interesting. The Trojan Horse wasn't just about winning the war, it was about crafting a legacy. Even if it never actually existed, the story served a purpose. The Greeks wanted to portray themselves as clever strategists, outsmarting their enemies with ingenuity rather than brute force. This was more than a victory over the Trojans, it was a victory over chaos, a way to prove that wit could triumph where swords failed. It's not just a tale, it's a lesson, designed to influence how future generations would view the Greek way of war. Now, throughout history, nations have used myths like the Trojan Horse to craft their public image. Think about how national heroes or pivotal battles are sometimes exaggerated to boost morale or justify actions. Stories like these aren't harmless. They shape the way we understand our past and influence our future decisions. Now, let's be honest. If someone told you today that a city fell because soldiers popped out of a giant horse, you'd roll your eyes faster than you can say fake news. But myths like the Trojan Horse persist because they tap into something universal: the thrill of trickery, the allure of outsmarting the opposition, and the hope that intelligence can overcome impossible odds. Whether or not the horse was real, the story resonates because it appeals to our love for cunning plots and clever twists. It also teaches us about the power of narratives. The Greeks understood that the way you tell your story matters. It's not just about what happened, it's about how you want people to remember it. And here's the kicker. Once a story like the Trojan Horse is out there, it's hard to unhear it. People will believe it, share it, and pass it along even if the facts are murky at best. The Trojan Horse is a great example of how history and myth can get tangled up, making it hard to tell what's true and what's just a good yarn. That's why critical thinking matters. Just because a story sounds good doesn't mean it's true. And just because it's old doesn't mean it's accurate. Whether you're dealing with ancient myths or modern media, it's always worth asking, what's the evidence? Who benefits from telling the story this way? And more importantly, does the narrative hold up under scrutiny? The key to navigating stories like these is to stay curious without becoming cynical. It's okay to enjoy the legend of the Trojan Horse as a piece of artful storytelling. Just don't let it replace critical thinking. History is full of surprises, and the truth is often more complicated than the stories we tell. At the end of the day, the truth about the Trojan Horse may never be fully known, and maybe that's okay. The real lesson isn't whether the horse existed, but how stories like these shape our understanding of history and influence our behavior. Believing a good story is easy. Challenging it, however, takes effort. And that's the kind of thinking we need more of in today's world. The next time you hear a tale that seems too perfect, take a moment to pause and ask yourself, is this a brilliant trick or just a tall tale? Alright, that was about the Trojan Horse. Now it's time for us to learn some vocabulary in context. Let me tell you about the first one, side-eyeing. When someone side-eyes a story or idea, it means they're suspicious of it. Think of the look you give your friend when they tell you they're just going to have one more slice of pizza. In the episode, historians were described as side-eyeing the Trojan Horse story, meaning they don't fully trust its authenticity. Then we talked about propaganda. Now, propaganda refers to information used to influence public opinion, often in a biased way. It's like an advertisement for ideas, designed not just to inform, but to persuade. In the episode, the Trojan Horse story was said to act as propaganda to highlight the Greeks' cleverness. We also talked about siege engine. A siege engine is a giant piece of equipment used in ancient battles to break through city walls. Imagine a battering ram or a catapult. In the episode, some historians theorize that the Trojan Horse might have been a siege engine, not an actual wooden sculpture. We also talked about critical thinking, of course. Critical thinking is the process of analyzing and evaluating information to make better decisions. It's like being a detective for ideas. Instead of just accepting a story, you ask questions like, does this make sense? Or where's the proof? And then the final word is scrutiny. Scrutiny means examining something very closely, looking for flaws or inconsistencies. It's what happens when your teacher checks your homework for errors. In the episode, stories like the Trojan Horse were said to require scrutiny to separate fact from fiction. So that's everything we have for the Trojan Horse. We still have 3 more stories. Next, we're going to talk about the moon landing was a hoax, how misinformation took off. That's coming next. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. It's July 20, 1969. Neil Armstrong takes that famous first step onto the surface of the moon and declares it one giant leap for mankind. The entire world watches in awe. Humans have landed on the moon. Or did they? Because not long after this historic event, whispers of doubt began to spread. What if the whole thing was just an elaborate performance? What if that one small step wasn't on the moon at all, but on a Hollywood soundstage? And just like that, the moon landing conspiracy was born, a stubborn myth that to this day refuses to fade. The moon landing hoax theory really gained traction in the 1970s, just a few years after the Apollo 11 mission. It wasn't the mission itself that caused suspicion, but rather the political climate of the time. The Cold War was in full swing, and space exploration was more than just a scientific pursuit. It was a race to prove who was superior, the US or the Soviet Union. A vocal minority argued that the moon landing was fake to score political points without the actual hassle of going to the moon. Add to that some grainy footage, odd shadows, and public distrust in the government, and boom, conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. Now here's the thing, people love a good conspiracy. It's like a puzzle that makes them feel smart for figuring it out. Believing in something counter to mainstream thought can give a sense of control in an unpredictable world. Misinformation is often rooted in skepticism, and when it's combined with a little distrust in authority, it's like lighting a fuse. The moon landing hoax theory appealed to that part of the brain that says, what if everything I've been told is a lie? This type of thinking isn't limited to the moon landing. It's the same impulse that fuels everything from flat earth theories to anti-vaccine movements. Now, one of the most popular arguments used by moon landing skeptics involves the shadows in the photographs. If the sun was the only light source, how could some objects cast shadows in different directions? Well, it turns out that light doesn't behave the way many people assume. On the moon's surface, uneven terrain and multiple reflections create these kinds of odd angles. And that fluttering American flag, it wasn't flapping in the wind. It was crumpled fabric held in place by a rod. Every proof the conspiracy theorists cling to has been debunked with scientific explanations. But for believers, facts don't always make a difference. Conspiracy theories about the moon landing started before the internet, but the web has supercharged their spread. Social media and YouTube videos make it easy for misinformation to go viral, reaching audiences faster than ever. Algorithms are like candy machines. They feed you more of what you already like. If you watch one video about the moon landing being faked, your feed will soon be filled with similar content, creating an echo chamber where the same misinformation bounces around endlessly. In a digital landscape where clicks matter more than truth, these theories can thrive. Now, at first glance, believing that the moon landing was faked might seem harmless, just another quirky conspiracy. But the problem runs deeper. Misinformation like this undermines trust in institutions, experts, and science itself. It plants the idea that nothing can be trusted, that everything could be a lie. This mindset spreads, eroding the foundation of a society that relies on shared facts to function. When people stop believing in evidence and expertise, it's not just space missions at risk. It's public health, education, and democracy itself. So how do we fight back against misinformation? It starts with critical thinking. It's about questioning claims, but also knowing where to look for reliable answers. The goal isn't to dismiss everything as false, but to learn how to tell the difference between a fact and a fantasy. Asking questions is great, and it's done in pursuit of the truth. The trick is to stay curious, but not to fall into the trap of believing every wild theory just because it feels exciting. As with the moon landing, the truth is often less thrilling, but far more meaningful than any conspiracy theory. The moon landing conspiracy shows us how easily misinformation can spread when skepticism turns into cynicism. It is okay to have doubts, but it's also essential to seek out evidence and follow where it leads, even if it's not as sensational as a Hollywood hoax. The next time you hear a theory that makes you raise an eyebrow, remember, a little skepticism is healthy, but a lot of it can make you see shadows where there are none. Keep your mind open, but not so open that common sense floats out like a flag on a lunar breeze. Well, that was about it, my friends. Now, let's talk about some words that we used in this topic, and let's learn about their meaning. Let's start with traction. Now, when something gains traction, it means it's catching on or becoming popular. Imagine a new dance trend spreading on social media. At first, only a few people do it, but soon it's everywhere. In the episode, the Moon Landing Hoax gained traction, meaning more people started believing it. We also talked about skepticism. Now, skepticism is a healthy dose of doubt. It's like when someone tells you they'll text you back in 5 minutes and you think, yeah, right. It's good to be skeptical sometimes, but when it turns into distrust of everything, it becomes a problem, as it did with the moon landing conspiracy. Then we have misinformation. Misinformation is false or misleading information, whether intentional or not. Think of it like a rumor spreading in a school. By the time it reaches you, it's nowhere near the truth. Misinformation about the moon landing spread quickly thanks to misunderstandings and mistrust. And again, we have echo chamber. An echo chamber is a space where people only hear opinions that match their own. Picture yourself in a room where everything you say is repeated back to you. That's what happens on social media when algorithms show you content that reinforce your beliefs, whether it's true or not. And finally, we have undermine. Now, to undermine something means to weaken or erode it over time, like how constant rain can wear down a stone wall. In the episode, we talked about how misinformation can undermine trust in science and institutions, making it harder for people to believe in facts and evidence. All right, my friends, we still have stories. We're not done. Don't go anywhere. Next, we're going to talk about weapons of mass destruction, the lie that triggered the Iraq War. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. It's 2003. The world holds its breath as the United States and its allies prepare to invade Iraq. The reason? Weapons of mass destruction, or WMDs. According to intelligence reports, Iraq's government, led by Saddam Hussein, is stockpiling chemical, biological, and possibly nuclear weapons. These weapons are described as an imminent threat to global security. The narrative is clear. If we don't act fast, we could face catastrophic consequences. The media repeats the message. Political leaders rally public support, and just like that, the invasion begins. But as the dust settles, one glaring question remains. Where are the weapons? Spoiler alert, they never existed. The Iraq War began with the promise of dismantling a regime armed to the teeth with deadly weapons. But despite extensive searches, no WMDs were ever found. So how did the world's most powerful nations launch a war based on a lie? The answer lies in flawed intelligence, political agendas, and the manipulation of fear. In the lead up to the war, reports and evidence were cherry-picked, exaggerated, and misinterpreted to justify military action. Leaders leaned heavily on shaky intelligence, presenting worst-case scenarios as unavoidable realities. And once the story of WMDs gained traction, it became difficult to stop. Fear is a powerful motivator, and when it's mixed with political ambition, it becomes a recipe for disaster. The war machine was already in motion, and turning back wasn't an option. The media played a key role in spreading the narrative about WMDs. Headlines warned of hidden stockpiles, nuclear ambitions, and chemical weapons that could devastate cities. News outlets echoed government claims without enough scrutiny, often treating speculation as fact. In times of uncertainty, fear sells, and this story had all the ingredients for a blockbuster. A menacing dictator, weapons capable of mass destruction, and the promise of swift justice. For many people, the media's relentless coverage blurred the line between truth and assumption. Public opinion swayed towards supporting the invasion because it seemed like the only reasonable response to such a terrifying threat. But in hindsight, it became clear that many of these reports were based on incomplete or faulty information. And so, the war that was supposed to be about disarming Iraq turned into a conflict with no clear objectives. After Saddam Hussein was overthrown, chaos took over. The absence of WMDs revealed a harsh truth. The war wasn't about weapons. It was about something else entirely. Regime change? Oil interests? A desire to assert dominance on the global stage? Perhaps all of the above. What's undeniable is the devastating impact. Hundreds of thousands of lives lost, a region destabilized, and the rise of extremist groups like ISIS, which filled the power vacuum left in the war's wake. And all of this started with a lie, or at least with the belief in a lie that was too convenient to question. You might wonder how such a massive falsehood took root. The truth is, people tend to believe what aligns with their fears and expectations. When something confirms a belief we already hold, say that a dictator like Saddam Hussein is dangerous, it becomes easier to accept without question. This is called confirmation bias, and it's one of the biggest challenges to critical thinking. Once an idea takes hold, even in the face of contradictory evidence, it can be tough to dislodge. Fear magnifies this tendency. The idea of hidden WMDs fit perfectly into a post-9/11 world, where threats seem to lurk around every corner. Leaders capitalized on that fear to push their agenda forward, and by the time doubts about the weapons surfaced, the damage was already done. The lesson from the WMD fiasco is painfully clear. Critical thinking isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. Believing everything at face value is dangerous, especially when decisions are being made that could lead to war. Asking tough questions, demanding evidence, and resisting the pull of fear-based narratives are all part of being a responsible citizen. The Iraq War shows how misinformation can have catastrophic consequences when it goes unchecked. In today's world, where information spreads faster than ever, it's even more important to evaluate the stories we're told. A healthy dose of skepticism might not always make you popular, but it could help prevent the next big lie from leading us into disaster. The lie about WMDs wasn't just a mistake. It was a reminder that the truth can be elusive, especially when it's inconvenient. But history offers us a chance to learn, to question, and to do better next time. So the next time you encounter a story that seems too neat, too terrifying, or too convenient, pause. Ask yourself, what's the evidence? Who benefits from telling the story? And what might happen if we just believe without questioning? And now let's talk about a couple of words that we encountered in this topic, and let's talk about what they mean in context. Let's start with imminent. Imminent means something is about to happen very soon, often with a sense of urgency or danger. Now think of how you feel when you know a thunderstorm is about to hit. Dark clouds, strong winds, and a feeling that the rain will start any second. In the episode, the word was used to describe how the threat of WMDs was framed as something about to strike at any moment. We also have cherry-picked. When information is cherry-picked, it means someone has chosen only the parts that support their argument while ignoring everything else. It's like taking only the red candies from a jar and pretending there were no other colors. Governments cherry-picked intelligence to make the case for war seem more convincing. And there's also confirmation bias. I know I talked about it a couple of times, but I will talk about it even more because this is a very important concept that we all need to understand. Confirmation bias, my friends, is the tendency to focus on information that supports what we already believe and ignore anything that contradicts it. And this concept, we need to understand this concept because it's very important and very dangerous at the same time. This bias played a huge role in how the WMD narrative was accepted without question. And there's also misinformation. Again, misinformation refers to false or misleading information, sometimes spread unintentionally and sometimes on purpose. Now, picture a game of telephone. By the time the message gets to you, it's been twisted beyond recognition. The episode highlights how misinformation about WMDs led to one of the most devastating conflicts in recent history. And finally, we have fallout. Now, fallout originally refers to the radioactive debris left after a nuclear explosion, but it can also mean the negative consequences of any event. If you break your mom's favorite vase, the fallout might involve some serious grounding. In the episode, the word describes the aftermath of the Iraq War: chaos, loss, and long-term consequences. Alright, my friends, that was about the WMDs in Iraq. Next, we're going to talk about the very last story for this episode, but don't forget, this is not the last episode of the series. We have 20 episodes in this series, and it's going to be on the podcast for 4 weeks. So we're going to have a lot of interesting stories, maybe eye-openers along the way, that will teach us something about becoming better critical thinkers. But for now, we still have one more story to talk about, and that is about Marie Antoinette. Did she really say, "Let them eat cake"? Let's find out about that together. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. It's the late 1700s, and France is on the brink of collapse. Bread prices are skyrocketing. Hunger is spreading like wildfire, and the common people are fed up with the royal family's extravagant lifestyle. Then comes the quote that would become legendary: "Let them eat cake." Supposedly, Queen Marie Antoinette, upon hearing that her starving subjects had no bread, shrugged and offered this heartless response. It was the ultimate symbol of aristocratic arrogance, proof that the queen was as clueless as she was privileged. There's just one problem: she never said it. The famous line didn't come from Marie Antoinette's lips. It likely came from a rumor designed to discredit her. Versions of this story existed long before she even arrived in France. Some historians trace it to the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who in his writings referred to a great princess saying something similar. But Rousseau never named the princess, and by the time the quote resurfaced during the French Revolution, it was conveniently pinned on Marie Antoinette. Why? Because nothing fuels a revolution like a villain. The people of France were hungry, desperate, and looking for someone to blame. The young Austrian queen, already unpopular for her foreign origins and lavish spending, became the perfect scapegoat. Whether or not she actually uttered the phrase didn't matter. The story was too good to fact-check. It fit the narrative perfectly. So why do people believe the lie? Well, we tend to believe stories that confirm what we already suspect. At the time, Marie Antoinette was seen as the embodiment of everything wrong with the monarchy: out of touch, wasteful, and indifferent to the suffering of the people. So when the rumors spread, it felt right. After all, wasn't she the queen who hosted extravagant parties while the rest of France starved? The quote was more than just words. It became a symbol of the disconnect between the rulers and the ruled. This is again what's called confirmation bias. Once the story aligns with what we think we know, we latch onto it, whether or not it's true. The truth becomes irrelevant, buried beneath layers of emotion and preconception. And here comes the power of a good story. The quote stuck because it told a great story. It's simple, memorable, and perfectly captures the drama of the French Revolution. Never mind that Marie Antoinette spent much of her reign involved in charity work, or that she was barely more than a teenager when she became queen. The truth couldn't compete with the power of the myth. Once the story takes on a life of its own, it's almost impossible to rein it in. The phrase "let them eat cake" became shorthand for the disconnect between the elite and the common people, a narrative that would shape Marie Antoinette's legacy for centuries. Now, this is how history sometimes works. Stories that fit the moment get remembered. while inconvenient truths get lost in the shuffle. And when those stories get repeated enough, they become facts in the public imagination, even when they're entirely made up. Now, you might wonder, does it really matter if Marie Antoinette said those words or not? Now, after all, the French Revolution still happened and the monarchy still fell. Yeah, but it does matter, because the story teaches us an important lesson about how easily misinformation spreads and how difficult it is to correct once it takes hold. The quote serves as a reminder that even history isn't immune to the effects of rumor and propaganda. It's a cautionary tale about the importance of questioning what we hear and looking beyond the easy narrative. Stories are powerful, but they shouldn't replace critical thinking. Marie Antoinette's story shows how myths can shape reality. It's easy to accept things at face value, especially when they fit into neat little boxes. But real life is barely that simple. Critical thinking is about recognizing when a story feels too good or too bad to be true. It's about pausing, asking questions, and digging deeper. Next time you hear something that sounds a little too perfect, take a step back and ask yourself, what's the evidence? Who benefits from this narrative? And what might the real story be? I know I've asked these questions a couple of times, and I will ask them 100 more times because these are the questions that really matter. At the end of the day, whether or not Marie Antoinette said let them eat cake is less important than the lesson her story teaches us. History is full of half-truths and convenient fictions, and it's up to us to sort through them. Cake or no cake, the truth is what really feeds us. Because without it, we're just swallowing empty calories, satisfying in the moment, but leaving us hungry for something real. Alright, that was about the story of Marie Antoinette's Let Them Eat Cake. And now before we wrap up, let me talk about a couple of words that we encountered in our topic today. Let's start with the word discredit. Now, to discredit someone means to harm their reputation by making others doubt their actions or character. It's like spreading a rumor about someone to make them look bad. In the episode, the Let Them Eat Cake quote was used to discredit Marie Antoinette by portraying her as heartless. And then we have a very interesting word, scapegoat. A scapegoat is someone who gets blamed for something, often unfairly, to divert attention from the real cause. Imagine getting blamed for your sibling's mess just because you were nearby when it happened. Marie Antoinette became the scapegoat for the people's frustrations, even though the problems ran deeper than her. And finally, we have narrative. A narrative is more than just a story. It's the way events are framed to convey a particular message. It's like the difference between saying I tripped and the ground attacked me. In the episode, the narrative about Marie Antoinette shaped how people remembered her, even though it wasn't based on facts. And with that, my friends, we come to the end of today's episode, our very first episode from the brand new series, The Lies We Still Believe. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into some of the myths we just can't seem to let go of. The earth might not be flat, but the rabbit hole of misinformation sure is deep, right? Whether it's a giant wooden horse or a fake moon landing, these stories remind us how important critical thinking is and how easily false narratives can shape our view of the world. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you want full access to all our episodes, plus some premium perks, become a premium subscriber on Apple Podcasts or Patreon. You can find the links in the description of the episode. And visit EnglishPlusPodcast.com, our website, for more, and explore our brand new shop, which has our exclusive audio series that might just become your next obsession. And remember, my friends, in a world full of stories, it's up to us to decide which ones are worth believing and which ones are not. This is your host, Danny. Thank you for listening. And remember, never stop learning with English Plus Podcast.